So I got a pair of the Gaerne Fastbacks in, and I have a pair of the Gaerne Dakars here. And I think this is a great opportunity to show the difference between a pair of MX boots and a pair of adventure boots by using kind of the same price point and some of it's kind of, these are a good comparison because there's a few similar features between the two, but then there's a host of differences. So this is a great way to show off what the differences are here. So the Dakar is, as my other video mentioned, a very, very nice adventure boot. And what does that really mean? Well, it means you're getting a really nice waterproof touring boot with a hinge. That's really it at the end of the day. You've got shin protection, you've got the cool MX style buckles, and then you have a really, really good mechanical hinge, as I mentioned in the other video, that has wonderful movement, very little noise, and it's easy to use. A good initial point here is, so your MX boot, and these are size 48 Euro or 13 US, so this is like about the biggest they get. I have big feet. You can see right now 4 buckles, and it's over an inch taller, so right there you have some differences. From the side, you have this tall additional protection plate here, which you do not have in the Dakar. So you can squish this very easily. You can still squish the inner part, but this is going to resist torsion and is also going to deflect and protect your shin, or excuse me, your calf. But this also adds width. You can see, like, I've got them tightened down pretty similar, how much wider the Fastback is. And it's got more of a plate here. This has a nice little plate, but it's not nearly as thick. So obviously this is going to be more protective, but for me, in this size, there are pants I can wear over the Dakar that I cannot wear over the Fastback. So those are some kind of gross differences there. Smaller things. So you think that, hey, same company, same hinge, there's a lot of other things that are similar. Well, besides the hinge and the buckles, and the fact they're both made by Gaerne, there's actually very little else shared. The sole, and I'll put up some kind of detailed photos, but the sole is different. This is a double compound sole with a single layer of stitching around it. Your MX boot is actually a triple layer sole with a much thicker shank that goes the whole length of the boot to add rigidity, and it's double stitched the whole way. So what's the practical difference there? Well, on the adventure boot, you can do this with minimal effort. From here back, it's pretty hard to bend. On the MX boot, you're not gonna do any bending. So that's another huge protection difference from front-on impacts. Other protection differences here, you've got plastic all around the boot on both sides. There's none of that on the Dakar. You've got the overall shaft height means that this thing actually, especially when your leg's in it, but it's going to resist torsion much better than leather. And again, this is a mid-range MX boot. So step up from here, you're going to find the CD Crossfire 3s or the Gaerne GX12s. And those have way more plastic all around. I used to have a pair of Crossfire 3s. They were insanely heavy and bulky, and for the sort of riding I was doing, they were just not necessary. But I could not bend those at all. So that's the step up. So at the end of the day, what's the difference here? Well, for a pound more and more height, and kind of some restrictions on the gear you can use, you're getting a boot in the Fastback especially, which these are both about, well, these aren't in the US yet, but these are about $300, $330 from overseas. These are $330 in the US with returns. So very similar price point. This gives you Gore-Tex and comfort. This gives you no Gore-Tex, massively more protection. And the big thing to me that really surprised me, so I've ridden in my Dakars now for about 600-700 miles, And they're fantastic. They're Gore-Tex and they're black, which means they get a little hot when it's in the 90s or mid 30 degrees Celsius here. I took these out today. I wanted to at least ride in them once before doing any sort of review or comparison. And it was 96 today as a high. I'm on an Africa Twin, so I'm not getting a whole lot of air on my feet. And these are cooler. So, what is that, 37, 38 Celsius. They're not like massively cooler because you don't have direct ventilation through, but they don't have a membrane. And on the inside, you actually have nicer padding. The insole is it's just a little tiny piece of super hard foam. This actually has a nicer insole, but that's fixable. Everything else, I was really surprised at how comfortable these were to ride in for hours in extremely hot heat. And I think that's what you pay for when you get a really good quality MX boot, is especially the Fastback, which is a really sweet spot. So it's 1 pound heavier. So this is 3.8 pounds in the biggest size. This is 4.8 pounds. And the crossbears I had were, I think, over a pound more. They were definitely over 5 pounds. So a fair bit heavier. These don't feel heavy. When I have them on, I can walk up and down stairs in them. I can throw my leg over my bike with them without even feeling the difference. So you're getting way more protection without really giving anything up. And I think that's the biggest point in something like a Fastback, or I think the equivalent CD would be the X3, that mid-range, where you're getting way more protection, equivalent if not better comfort than an adventure boot. Because the other side too is, right, if you stand on pegs, these aren't terrible, but the rigidity that you saw there is going to let you stand on the pegs for a long time without experiencing any fatigue on your feet from a non-rigid sole. Like you see a lot of people riding in, let's say, a Forma Adventure, which doesn't really have much of a shank at all. They'll complain about foot soreness after a while, just because that you're not standing on a hard shanked platform. So this will prevent that, and it just gives you so much more protection. And the thing that surprised me the most, so I took the metal caps off, is despite not having that 4-foot flex that feels very natural to walk in, these are very comfortable to walk in. I wouldn't want to go hiking in them for a long period of time, but for walking around to, I don't know, get coffee at Starbucks, adventure riders, right? Or anything like that, these are great. So it's like all the upsides of a very protective boot with none of the downsides that you're getting here, like the flexible sole or the lack of high up rigidity. To me, I think it's worth it. These are more comfortable. They're Gore-Tex, so if you're touring, that's always nice. Especially if you're in a cooler climate. But I mainly ride in very hot Virginia summers where it's usually in the 90s. And so I think for me, I'm going to wind up selling my Dakars and keeping the Fastbacks. And so I hope that's a kind of a helpful comparison of the differences between a adventure boot and a MX boot that come in pretty comparably price point. They use the same hinge, so I thought this was a better than average comparison. I will say that for adventure boots, and I've tried the Toucan, I've handled the CD Adventure, they're too narrow for me. I've tried some of the other non-hinged adventure boots. For all adventure boots, in my opinion, this is the best. It's the best mix of a totally silent hinge, decent protection, touring comfort, Gore-Tex, reasonable price point, made in Italy. So for me to say that, hey, this is the best adventure boot in my opinion, but I'm going to take this over it, I think maybe says a little. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful to people. And otherwise, I'm trying to see let's see if I forgot anything. There's some really good reviews out on the Fastback in general. I will say it's really adjustable, which I like. I almost couldn't loosen the straps on this enough to have them fit over my calves. An MX boot generally gives you adjustability in the top two buckles and more space down below, so it's easier to get these on. And yeah, If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'm probably overexcited to answer. And otherwise, again, hope this helped.